Saints are quickly becoming Raiders South. And now New Orleans is even leaning on former Raiders head coach Jon Gruden.
Jon's a guy that has a lot of experience with Derek, and Derek's had his most success under Jon Gruden.
Jon Gruden has been working with the New Orleans Saints and his former quarterback, Derek Carr, and we have learned some new information about this relationship. Some have speculated that this is just temporary, but we have learned that this may actually be more long-term than we realize. Jon Gruden in New Orleans is something that you just might have to get used to. We're gonna break all this down. Make sure you like this video if you have not yet, and subscribe. So, we heard that Jon Gruden helped out at OTAs for Derek Carr to transition into that offense, transition into this new offense, the West Coast offense that Carr is familiar with. The Saints were in a variation of that. And keep in mind, Sean Payton was the QB coach under Jon Gruden in the late 90s when Jon Gruden was the offensive coordinator with the Philadelphia Eagles. So Sean Payton learned this West Coast offense from Jon Gruden. So now that Sean Payton has left the New Orleans Saints, he's out there with the Denver Broncos with Mr. Let's Ride Unlimited Russell Wilson. Now, if you're the Saints, you got a defensive-minded head coach. You got Dennis Allen. Why not grab the guy and have him help out your offense, who not only knows Derek Carr, but also literally taught the dude that your franchise worships, Sean Payton, literally taught him that offense. He taught him that offense. A lot of people want to hate on Jon Gruden because, the record with the Raiders hasn't been that great, and you often wonder, is it the Raiders or is it these individual people? But at the end of the day, Jon Gruden's been insanely influential. He's influenced Sean McVay, and now we have Sean Payton. He's going to influence any Sean, so we'll see what happens there. But there's some new details that have come about with regards to his lawsuit, and we've wondered, hey, like the NFL canceled Jon Gruden. Are they really going to be cool with him coming back, right? And so you have Mike Florio writing about this. Jon Gruden's recent work with the Saints shouldn't impact his lawsuit, which is quite interesting.
It is interesting. I was going to say about Sean Payton and the Broncos. Sean Payton already threw shade via Terry Bradshaw at Russell Wilson, basically saying I'm stuck with the guy. So, and he has Jarrett Stidham to help him out and help decode McDaniel's super complicated offensive scheme, his genius scheme, So Brian Flores, who's actually with Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, has active litigation against the league. Jon Gruden has active litigation against the league. Both seem like they're involved with the NFL right now. And so Florio's talking about the legality of that. And apparently there was no pushback from the league. So did the owners have to vote on whether Gruden could be like a consultant?
The owners did not have to vote on whether or not Jon Gruden would be a consultant. This is just something that happened independently, but many people believe around the NFL, including Mike Florio, he's alluded to this, that, the Saints probably, and their owner, Gail Benson, who's a woman, so apparently Gruden's comments weren't that derogatory, but anyways, she probably got some assurance from the commissioner and the other owners that it would be okay to have Gruden come back and work, especially since he was canceled. We've seen how the refs have treated the Raiders and the Saints. The Saints have gotten it too. And, with the masking, not wearing your mask correctly in 2020, Gruden got dinged and fined hella money for that. And so did Sean Payton of the Saints that year. So if you're the owner, Gail Benson of the Saints, you're going to want to check in with the league and be like, hey, if I bring Gruden to help out, are you going to rig some crap against me? Because I know you guys have done some stuff before, right? And so many people believe because the Saints flipped on the Thursday night football flexing, can we flex games towards the end of the season with the Thursday night football? Can we switch it out? At first they were saying no, and they switched to yes. Speculation has brewed that maybe they switched their vote because they got reassurance that working with Jon Gruden would be a-okay. The point is now, what is the future for Jon Gruden? And from what we've heard and what we've learned, it seems like there might be more of a future. So we talked about Dennis Allen earlier. He's a defensive-minded head coach. He's not going to have his hands on the offense. Pete Carmichael, we've mentioned him before, the offensive coordinator of the Saints. This is a guy who was offered to interview for the head coaching job and said no, and was even allowing the Saints to interview other offensive coordinators, and he was still going to be on the staff if they went out and grabbed Jay Gruden. The Saints inquired and even interviewed Jay Gruden, the younger brother of Jon Gruden. So this has all been in the air for some time. They've wanted a Gruden, and Pete Carmichael doesn't mind not being the leader of the offense, clearly, and Dennis Allen is a defensive-minded coach. He's bringing in Gruden and doesn't have a problem with delegating tasks taken decisions with Jon Gruden, with Derek Carr. I truly believe they brought in Derek Carr to sort of run his offense and run the offense because he's seen them have success. And the Saints lately haven't had much success on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and I mean, the way that you hear Saints fans talk about it, it makes sense. They lost Drew Brees and Sean Payton. They haven't been that high scoring of a team. You know, defensively, maybe they're losing a couple vets this year. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be as much of a powerhouse. Like, there was essentially an intact offense with the Raiders team, the 2021 playoff team, ultimately, that got dismantled by this new front office. And they're looking to kind of take most of it. I mean, because I guess Brian Edwards is already gone, but like kind of put that in, you know, in New Orleans and see if it works out. And it's like, you know, there's a lot of dead labor that's gone into the Gruden and the Carr situation. And it was just starting to pop off. And then we all just got robbed of being able to see the fruits of 3 years of labor, right? Yeah. And so now we're like excited to finally see what they can do together.
And we've seen on prime time, especially in 2020, like the Derek Carr, the Purple Walrus, and the Cindy Gruden, like he's making all those funny audibles.
Cindy Gruden, yeah.
And it goes
during the lockdown year, you could hear it all because there's no fans in the crowd.
Oh yeah, and dude,
it was kind of unfair. But
Gruden's press conference afterwards was so funny. He's like, "Yeah, I'm really glad the whole world could hear our calls." Next question. All the Purple Walrus, the Cindy Gruden, like you've said, they've developed this over time. There is so much work that's got into it. Obviously, with McDaniels last year, that kind of threw a wrench in the spokes, and you had to sort of go it his way or the highway. And apparently, his way is 6 wins with Devontae Adams.
But it's true.
It's true. And like, okay, yeah, why not just pick up where we left off? Why not pick up where we left off? And dude, when you could work with someone, when you really know them, that's where you could make a lot of progress. Like you said, you got all that dead labor done. And these people were neighbors. We just forget that they were neighbors. They know each other really well. They like each other. They know each other's flaws. Whenever you know someone really well, you know how to be honest about what their flaws are. And I think there's a level of honesty that they have with one another. Can you be transparent with someone who you work with? Can you say, hey, look, dude, I really don't think I could execute that play. I think we should do something else. Is somebody who you don't know going to be that real with you about that? There has to be an element of security there in order to make that kind of progress. What was very interesting and very eye-opening for me was to hear Austin Carr of Harvester Sports. He is David Carr's son. And he's the nephew of Derek Carr. His comments about this, and I suggest you guys check out their show, Harvester Sports, especially if you're interested in what's going on with anything related to Derek Carr and just regular NFL. They have really good takes on a lot of things.
I think they're funny too.
And they're funny. They have a sense of humor. I do enjoy their show. And there's a lot of things that were said here. And I'm only going to show a little bit, but one that I thought was very interesting was even after Gruden was canceled in that 2021 season, like they still talked on a weekly basis.
That was huge.
Yeah, that was huge. And I didn't exactly hear, and maybe some people could comment below, I didn't exactly hear that they still talked in 2022 on a weekly basis, but we know for a fact they talked about football on a weekly basis in 2021.
When they narrowly made the playoffs.
Yeah. So Gruden was still helping out.
Yeah.
Even though he was canceled and no longer a part of the team and had to resign.
Imagine being Derek Carr and having to play the whole game and then going home and then talking to Gruden about the game.
Yeah.
And then getting your notes, your improvement notes or whatever going into the next week.
And I'm sure they still probably talked about the disastrous season of 2022. If you're having the weekly conversation in 2021, wouldn't be surprised if that conversation carried over in 2022. And I suggest you guys watch the majority of this on your own time, but the enthusiasm about Gruden working with the Saints was very clear through Austin Carr here. And here's the key thing that he said that I found very interesting, which shows the plan with the New Orleans Saints and Derek Carr.
Derek understands what his pros are and what his cons are. Stemming back from when he did the Jon Gruden football camp with Derek, when Derek was coming out of Fresno. That was a lot of nasal right there. That's on me. But like Derek's just really excited to have Jon back. And it's not the last you're going to see of Jon in New Orleans. He'll for sure come back and help Derek pretty often from what I'm hearing.
So that's huge for me. You got to go back if you're Willie. It's not the last you're going to hear of Jon Gruden in New Orleans. He's going to come back and keep helping out from what he hears. And who does he hear things from? Well, his last name's Carr. So I think you know where he's hearing a lot of things from. Wow.
It's interesting too, because this Florio article, he says a short-term stint aimed at helping former Raiders quarterback Derek Carr make the transition to a new offense and a new team hardly operates as a palate cleanser for Gruden's coaching career. So he's calling it a short-term stint. And then he's saying what we all, what we're thinking about. It's possible Gruden didn't even get paid for his temporary visit to the Saints offseason practices. You think maybe he got a couple $100,000 or something. I don't think he needs it. I think he probably did do it pro bono, use, another legal term. term. And then, of course, at the end there, Florio sort of wrapping up that Gruden and his legal team, by the way, Mark Davis's lawyer as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Vegas lawyer, that Gruden will have to prevail in his effort to keep the case from being forced to arbitration. So Gruden has seen, if you guys have been following our updates on the Gruden case, his side, they've had a number of sort of soft wins against this attempt by Goodell to force it into arbitration, which basically means it's not going to be in court and we're not going to go to discovery and we're not going to be able to get all the rest of the emails and get the truth out there, right? If it's just arbitration, it's just going to be hush, hush, go away. And Goodell is going to basically like quash it, pillow over the face. And so Gruden's trying to keep that from happening. It's still sort of a pending issue before the Nevada Supreme Court. We're waiting to get kind of an update on that, but it seems like very prolonged and stalled out. And now that you're seeing this, it is possible that Gruden's like, hey, I think I've got a solid freaking case. I think you people are in trouble. Let me back in or else. And would that be so wrong? That could be kind of cool, right? But we don't necessarily need to see all the, because we know what would it even take for that to happen. I mean,
they don't want that to happen.
They're not going to ever let that happen.
They don't want the court case to continue. Just in case you don't know, they don't want the court trial or the court case to continue because then discovery process would open all the emails up.
It's done.
And even a lot more stuff. So they want to keep it all under wraps for sure. You made a comment there about Gruden probably not getting paid. And earlier in this article that we mentioned, they talked about the fact that Gruden working with the Saints could undermine his lawsuit. Oh, you're able to find some work, so you're not discriminated against in the NFL after all. Well, if he doesn't get paid, is it really a job?
That's what I was. Yeah,
that's what you're implying there.
It's an
right?
unpaid internship.
It's an unpaid internship. So that's a good point that you're bringing up because then it's like he didn't get a job technically. He volunteered.
They did is they let Jon freaking Gruden, NFL legend, into the building to sit in their meetings with them and potentially say some things or give out some free advice or something, right?
Well, he was all in the facility for hours and hours and hours.
Obviously,
I mean, he was all day there, multiple days too.
Yeah. And he was in the most important rooms with the most important people, literally scheming for the upcoming Saints season, right? So it wasn't just like a facilities tour and, here's some bullet points on Derek Carr, his pros and cons.
Oh, no, he was all up in that.
Right?
Here's the thing, the reason why I think this mother effer is coming back, and here's why. And with the Saints, and this is why I love the Austin Carr comment that we showed earlier, man. And almost a tear came to my eye when I heard that. God. Like, dude, this guy loves football so much. How does he get in the building and how do you kick him out? This guy has just such an infectious personality. He's so brilliant when he comes to football and the offensive side, especially. Yeah. How would you be able to reject him wanting to continue to help out in the future? There's just no way. And if he's open to the opportunity, how do you deny yourself adding him to your squad? Like this guy, I think he's way too convincing. I think in person it's probably even crazier, and I think his contributions probably really stand out, and his confidence in running his offense, which Sean Payton learned a lot from him back in Philly in the late 90s. So yeah, I think it's headed in that direction. I think Austin Carr can't say too much, so he said those comments which are basically like, hey, from what I'm hearing, he's going to be around. So, but
when you hear Austin Carr, like Tyler Carr, these people, they're not saying league sources. No, they're literally related to Derek Carr.
They're like,
so
yeah.
I don't know. They might have some inside info. Talk about inside info.
Yeah, they were like assembling a sandwich in the kitchen, and then heard Derek and Gruden be like, oh yeah, so you're going to be back around August? Yeah, you know what I mean? That's the league source.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's awesome to see. And look, I'm excited.
It's exciting.
It's exciting.